Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. All right, hi friends, and welcome to week 13. I think we're at week 13. I should always write it down, but I always forget to. Welcome to another weekly wrap up, and yeah, boy, do I have some stuff to talk about, both good and mixed. It's gonna be a great time. But first, I want to say a huge thank you to my supporters who make this happen. I was just reflecting this morning in an Instagram story that it was 2 years ago that I lost my job. And Easter moves around a bit, so it was actually like in April 2 years ago, and it was May 1st that I officially started my own business or whatever. But it was 2 years ago because it was the Thursday before Good Friday that I was let go from my job, and I had no idea what I was going to do. So I'm feeling extremely thankful for my patrons and channel members and everyone who watches and engages with my content, which makes me sound so much like a social media influencer, but I guess I am, right? Because you guys literally help me keep the lights on and help me pay my bills. And every one of you, from the smallest to the biggest contributor, make this happen. And, you know, I know that I spend a lot of these weekly wrap-ups at the beginning reflecting on that, but each week that I wake up and I'm doing this on my I'm doing this job that I love, I'm waking up and going to the coffee shop and reading books and reviewing books and talking with authors for my job. I'm so humbled by it. Like, there's not another thing to say. So this week, a new supporter is Chelsea. Chelsea, thank you so much for supporting me here. I hope you enjoy the content. For you, if you've been on the fence joining, you can always follow my Patreon without officially joining, because I do post a few things that are for everyone to see. But at this point now, there will be, I believe there should be like 23 exclusive reviews just for you guys. There's 71 behind the scenes vlogs, as well as I post updates there about what's going on in my life. You're the first one to know about updates to the Etsy shop, to what I'm doing, plans I have. All of it goes to Patreon first. So again, whether you are a paid subscriber there or you just want to follow to keep an eye on me, you can definitely check that out. Speaking of my Etsy, I still have quite a few of the new designs in right now. I'm not really planning to buy any like new fabric until I sell a bit of the back stock that I have. I do still have the mystery sleeves that are only $10 and $14, which is great. But I did have a little bit of fabric left over from the computer cases that I made, which I hope, like, I'll hopefully make more of those soon. But I had some fabric left from the bee one and the flowers, so I don't know if these will still be available when you see me showing them, but these are the hardback, aka the extra large sleeves. I love these ones. They're so pretty. I just do not need them all for myself. So definitely check out my Etsy shop. There is a coupon always for 10% off. And I do still have some of the love ones left. Those are so cute. I love the little suckers, as well as just a few random ones there. So a lot of these, I get people asking for more in, and they probably won't be back around until that next season, because I just kind of buy which fabric is interesting. I make as many sleeves out of it as I can, or whatever strikes me, and then it's gone, because that's just what's worked best for my business and for what I enjoy making, because, Etsy's just the little sprinkle on top of everything, right? Okay, enough about that. We have, I think, like 9 books to talk about today. Quite a few of them, well, a few of them were rereads. We have some arcs, all that good stuff. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first book was a reread, and I did not enjoy myself too much with this one. So I reread God of Wrath by Rena Kent. So I knew that this one was gonna not be the funnest because I didn't enjoy this the first time. This was the first book that like made me kind of nervous in the series, right? We've talked about it. I was nervous to read this series to begin with, but God of Malice and God of Pain I really enjoyed. God of Wrath reminded me a lot of the Rena Kents that made me stop reading her, which I know, but when I first read it, I was like, ooh, I don't know. But the next book was Landon / is Landon's. And so I was willing to still try that one because I thought Landon was such an interesting character. And I'm glad that I did. But this one is about Jeremy Volkov. I think it's Jeremy Volkov. Yes, Jeremy Volkov, who is Annika's older brother, who we saw in God of Pain. And he's going to be a mafia leader. And then the heroine in this one is Cecily, who, in my opinion, is from like the most normal family in my opinion. Of course, they're still an elite family and they're still, you know, going to be that. But Xander and Kim are kind of the most like normal in a lot of this group. And this one has primal play in it. Cecily sees herself infatuated with Landon in the beginning. So she is doing things for him that he asks her to do, including trying to spy on King's U College. And she puts herself in some dangerous places, okay? And she also is into primal play, but she is still a virgin. She's never actually got to do it with anyone. And she knows that Landon is a part of some, you know, kinky clubs. And so she tries to put herself in his path. But what she doesn't know is that Jeremy is also watching her, and he kind of like intercepts those things and inserts himself into the one playing these games with her. So, yes, there's primal play in here, which I love. I wrote it down, too. There's knife play, there's biting, there's blood play, breath play, lots of degradation, and there's even gun play in this one. And the problem that I had with this, which is, again, the same problem I have with, like, some of the older Rena Kents, is that I don't mind an asshole hero, okay? I don't mind it. I read dark romance. Carter Mahoney's my #1 homeboy. Like, I am okay with it. But in my dark romance, there's a fine line between they are obsessive or they're psychotic or they're like whatever, and then how they treat the heroine. Like, even if they're still manipulating and maybe like dubious consent with this heroine, I still like to feel like they like the person they're doing it to, even if it's in their own twisted way. I don't know. Again, it's really hard to explain. But even like Killian and, what's his name? Creighton in these, they're more like just interested in this woman that catches their eye, and they want to play games with them maybe and see what makes them tick. And so there isn't this like innate hatred that feels like it's there. And in this, I mean, I know Jeremy doesn't hate her, but it feels like he does. And he just is so like angry and cruel in the way that he deals with her. And she apparently gets turned on by it, but also she seems like she doesn't for so long in the book. And again, this is why this series worked for me in the other books and why this one doesn't, is that in both of the first 2 books, for me, the reason why the women don't tell their parent what's going on, because again, they all have parents who love them in this series. They could tell their parents if things were getting over their head. But they don't, because they are interested in what's happening, right? And so I believe it in God of Malice that she doesn't want to let her parents in because she's having a lot of guilt with stuff and she feels like she should be punished. So she lets this man do that to her. And in the second one, I feel like Annika, you know, she poked the bear. And so when he comes at her, she's like, ooh, like, I want to see where this goes. With Cecily, he's so mean to her. I don't know another way to say it. And her dad is so sweet. Like, she has such a great relationship with her dad. The fact that she won't tell her dad what's happening, I don't like that. I don't know. I don't like it. I would have told my dad if I was being treated the way Jeremy is treating me, because she might like the primal kink. She might like that. But there's so much other stuff that he does to her, talks to her, degrades her, and treats her that I don't like. So it's enough harping. For some people, Jeremy is their favorite. In every book, any hero you don't like is someone's favorite. So, but for me, like, I gave this, I think, 3.5 stars the first time. I gave it a 2.5 this time. I reread this and annotated it for Kyan, and she's never read this series. So she's like, wow, I'm intrigued by how much you hate it. And I was like, go along for the ride, baby. But next month I get to reread God of Ruin, and I'm very excited to reread Landon. So yeah, this was a 2.5 for me. It is a oops, I think I wrote the wrong. It's like a 3.5, 4 on the spice scale. It is really spicy. This one is. This is 4, 4.5. Sorry. I don't know why I wrote that. What was I thinking? But yeah, this one just doesn't work for me. It doesn't. Okay, next up I read an arc of Noelle Adams. So she was actually releasing this one as a serialized thing, but I don't like to wait for things. You guys know this, so I waited till it was all out. So this book, Counted, is actually a like flip the script of one she wrote called Listed. And it's like a bucket list, you have 3 months to live type of romance. So I haven't read Listed, but Counted kind of came to her when she wanted to like gender swap the situation. So apparently Listed is there's a young woman who discovers she only has 3 months to live and she wants to get married and like be, you know, have that before she dies. And in this one, we have our hero Jude, who he's an author. He actually lost his mother to a brain tumor, and he's now been told that he has the same type of tumor. And our heroine is a family friend who he had actually proposed to her before, but she didn't think he really saw her as romantic. She didn't understand why he was proposing to her, and so she, you know, turned him down. But now they meet up, and he tells her that he is dying and he has barely 3 months to live, and he has a bucket list that he's had you know, since he was young, and there was things on this list that his mother wanted him to have, and one of those included, you know, traveling to certain places as well as being married. And he also wants to finish his final book, and so he's looking for someone who will be married to him, and then he's actually going to leave most of his wealth to her. And so she, you know, is conflicted by this, but she agrees to it. Her name is Eve, by the way. So she agrees to do this, not for the money, but because he is a family friend and he seems like such a genuinely nice man. They're about the same age. I don't think he's a ton older than her, but they're like about the same age. And so she agrees it. And they get married, you know, right away in the beginning of this book. And they also decide, like, well, we're going to have this be a real marriage, even though we're still kind of doing things a little bit, you know, mechanical in some aspects. Like, she right away is like, well, aren't we going to have a wedding night? And he's like, well, I was never going to assume. And she's like, well, if you're not attracted to me. And he's like, oh, I am. I just wasn't going to, like, that's not part of the deal. You don't have to share your body with me. And she's like, well, I want to, and I want you to get to enjoy pleasure your last months of life. Like, why not? So that's what I mean about like the awkward funness that gets put in, because she thinks she's bad at sex, but she's like, well, I can at least get him off. That'll be nice, and he'll get me. It'll be great. So it's this like, they're just mutually going to please each other, right? And of course, their chemistry is really great. They're able to communicate so well because in the beginning of this, there like aren't feelings involved, right? Because it is purely a like marriage of convenience. But they're like, well, why wouldn't we conveniently have sex, you know? And so they're very willing to be open about what they like and what they don't like, because there aren't any like, you know, there aren't any stakes higher than someone's going to die in 3 months. So why not be honest? But then they also go on some trips together, you know, going to places he wants to go. But he is sick. And he will get these horrible migraines. He will throw up. And it's very scary to see. So this is a romance, though. Spoiler alert, he does not die. I won't tell you how or why or what the miracle is. I'm not saying it's a miracle just because I mentioned there were people of faith. I'm not saying, but you'll read it, you'll see. And I just thought it was beautiful. I thought it was really beautiful. It was one of her kind of longer stories, but that means like it was 310 pages or something. Noelle Adams and Claire Kent writes very to the point, quick stories. Like none of them are super long. So this was a longer one at 310 pages or so. But I just really liked it a lot. Her stories are just, I just love how she does that. The communication and the way that they both like aren't supposed to fall in love, because the stakes are high, like he's going to die. So finding love with the person who's going to die, like, is a lot. I talked a lot about that one, but I gave it 4.5 stars, and it's a 3 on the spice scale. This one comes out, I think, in about like 2 weeks, but I'll have a link down below if you want to pre-order it or see it. And again, I highly recommend you check out some of Noelle Adams if you've liked Claire Kent, because she has a lot of like more trope specific ones. Like I just bought a series that's all best friend's brother, and it has like some other tropes going along with that. So those are the ones I got that were on sale that I'm going to try reading. Whew. Okay, next up was To Bleed a Kingdom by Ella Dawes. And this is a new release. It just came out on the 27th, I think. So yeah, this is a new release. This is a debut fantasy from Ella Dawes. And I had a lot of mixed feelings about this one. So how to talk about this one? So, okay, this book started very powerfully. I will tell you that. The prologue to this takes place, I believe it's like 32 or 34 years in the past or whatever. And we have this queen who, she has some type of magic. I'm not quite sure what hers was. But she wakes up to her husband dying. And I believe she's like connected to him. And that's why she feels it. Like he dies somewhere else in their home. And so she wakes up and she realizes she needs to get her and her children out of there. So she has 2 kids. She has a boy and a girl. They're very little. And so she wakes them up and is rushing them to kind of this like portal that will get them to safety. And she's able to get her children out. But then she gets caught by the bad guy in this case, and he actually rapes her. And we see most of this. It isn't like completely graphic, but that is a big trigger warning, like right off the bat in this. This happens to her. And the reason why they show that and it happens is that, so the bad guy does end up getting like caught right after he's attacked her. He gets killed and like taken out. And however, she gets pregnant from this rape. So she is still the queen now, but now she has a bastard son who she hates because he reminds her of the night she lost her husband and she was raped and all this happened. So this son is Darius, and he's actually now the captain of the guard, because like I said, it goes forward like 32, 34 years, I can't remember. And he's now the captain of the guard, and he has an older brother and sister. He's very close with his older sister. The older brother, not as close, but his siblings don't hate him. It's kind of interesting where like the siblings don't hold it against him. And a lot of stories I've read that have, you know, not exactly the same scenario, but like a half sibling or something like that. Usually there's a lot of animosity. And as of what I see, there's not a ton of that. In fact, the older sister just like loves him. Like they have a really good relationship. But in the beginning of this book, we see him being captain of the guard. There's some political unrest that's happening. And then we have Lena, who shows up with a group of people. I'm saying people because that's the way I'm grouping. They are different types of beings that I don't know all of the magical creatures that they were or whatever. But she's there looking for something. And so she's not being completely honest about what she's looking for. But what is crazy is that the first moment he sees her, he is extremely attracted, turned on, and feels connected to her. Okay? So in this world, that is going to be, it's a fated mate connection. But we are ignoring it. We're just realizing we feel very horny for this person. And I'm using that word because that's how it is. So what, like, the author even says this has a lot of humor in it. I found it a bit distasteful that we started this book with a rape and now like there's going to be some humor interjected in this. And it very quickly became one of those books that is something that gives me the ick in this respect, that every time either of them was around each other, they were either wet or hard or imagining fucking the person. And it was that kind of thing in this fantasy. And you know, I just couldn't quite get a handle on a vibe of this story. And there were some interesting parts of it. There is these like beings that are like zombies that are taking over. It's very hard to fight them. So we know about that. There's also parts of the kingdom who don't believe that that's real. They don't think that's really happening. And also then we have Lena here who's looking for something. And she is snooping around this kingdom and keeps running into Darius and feeling attracted with him. And she doesn't know, or he doesn't know if he can trust her, but they have this sexual connection with each other. Like, it was just strange, okay? And again, I know, you guys know, I know, I'm not the best at explaining a fantasy, but I gotta tell you that for the fact that this was called a slow, I'm going to rant a little bit, for the fact that this was called like a slow burn romance with low spice, that's what they were calling this, okay? And the reason I'm pointing that out is that I think it's a cop-out to call it a slow burn with low spice when the amount of times the hero's cock was mentioned was over 52 times. Yes, because I did the check of how many times cock was mentioned. Because he was thinking about it all the time. And I was like, I get it. You feel a connection with her. Your dick needs to calm down. And it just got so gross because sure, there's not a sexual interaction between them until the end, but they are constantly thinking about it the whole way. And it was like, I hate when authors do this. This is not the first time I've read it, where they're like, well, I don't want them to have sex yet because I need it to be a slow burn, but they're just going to think about banging the person every time they're around them. And then that's a slow burn, right? If the P doesn't go in the V, then it's a slow burn, right? And it's like, no. To me, it wasn't, because it was like there was no anticipation left by the time it was happening because they'd all but fucked them in each other's minds this whole time. Anyway, there was more to this story going on. And I was the last 75 pages of this book kept me like, but this book was 500 pages and I skimmed a good chunk of it because it was just horning people all the time. Mysteries in the kingdom, bad people here. His mother doesn't like him. We don't know who she is. What is she? What type of powers does she have? What can she do? Like, these things were all in there, but it was just so convoluted and there was humor that didn't belong in there, in my opinion. It was just, I didn't enjoy myself. So this was an arc. I gave it a 3.5 stars so that I could be kind of nice, but I don't even know if I want to continue it, but I might try based on, like, the reveal at the end it did blow my mind. Like, it had a reveal that I was like, whoa, that's kind of cool. Okay. One of these characters is a very unreliable narrator. I'll say that. And it led to a cool reveal. So there's that. I don't know. The book looked cool, but also, haven't you seen 1001 covers that look like this? Like with blades and like To Bleed a Kingdom, right? Like, I kept getting this one confused with like To Save a Kingdom, to like Lose a Kid. Like, they're all the same. And so there wasn't anything special about this one. So yeah, 3.5 stars, like a 1.5 on the spice scale, but they acted horny enough for it to be more than that, you know? Okay, moving right along, because we're already talking too long. I reread A Hunger Like No Other by Cressley Cole. I won't go too far into this because this is an older book and I've read this a few times and talked about it before. I annotated this for a patron. They asked me to pick a Cressley Cole. And when I was thinking back, I haven't reread this one in a while. Because when I first read this series, I read it like twice through, like very fast. Like I actually looked it up. It was the summer of 2020 that I first read this series, and I binged through it and then I like reread it again. So I've read this one twice. But yeah, this was the first time reading it without the audiobook, actually, because since I had to annotate it, I didn't use the audiobook, and I didn't really like it as much not having Robert Peckoff read it to me, just being honest. But of course, I still had a good time with this. I don't have like bad things to say about this book, you know. Are there things that are a little bit uncomfortable to look at now? Yes, but it's a paranormal. It was a paranormal from, I believe, 2006. There's still like so much good that she set up in this book that's all the way back in here. What rereading this book did remind me of is that we still have a lot of questions that are unanswered. And I'm really hoping, I mean, I know so, but like, I'm really hoping we get to some of them soon, because book 18.5 just came out. Okay. The Witch Queen of Halloween just came out. And like, I would like to get some more answers now after so long, you know what I mean? About Fury, about like the Meyers, like there's just a lot of stuff I want answers to. But I enjoyed revisiting this. I forgot how awful Lachlan is to Emma. It doesn't make me trash the book. Again, I know what I'm in for when I read these, but it was interesting to me because back in October, I did reread books 3 through like 9. Like, I reread quite a few, which I really enjoyed. And Lachlan is definitely one of the worst to his heroine to start. Granted, he starts the book by having to bite off his own leg, so I understand, but it was just interesting. But again, like Lothair shows up all the way back in this one. There's just so many cool things about it. So I still really enjoyed rereading it, but I did move this down to a 4-star just because the other books that I reread, I didn't have as many things to nitpick. And though those nitpicks are by no means ruining my love of Cressley Cole or of this series, I didn't have as much to nitpick in those ones. So those all stay at a 5 and a 6-star, but this one's going down to a 4, just because I'm allowed to adjust my thoughts after 4 years, you know? Some of those that I reread, I liked even more another time because I understood how well she built the story. Once you know what's going to happen, when you see how it's built from the beginning, it's just so awesome. Okay, next up, we just have a quick DNF. And I felt bad about this one because this is a like smaller author, and I was really intrigued by just some of the uniqueness to the setup. I will say that. But it actually came down to the writing choices being made, which y'all know that is not usually something to ruin my enjoyment for a story. But this, y'all, I think this gets an exception because it was a rough row to hoe. Okay, it was a rough row to hoe with it, all right? But this was called The Veteran by Xavier Neal, and I was reached out to read this. It's a second book in the Delvegan Dragons hockey romance. This is a single dad and a nanny romance is what it's supposed to be. Now, at the beginning of this book, you will find that there is this, like, there's kind of a, like, warning that tells you that this will be an extremely hockey slang type of book. Like, these words are going to be used. And there's a whole glossary at the beginning with, like, 3 pages of different hockey slang and things. And I was like, oh, wow, we're really going to try to be authentic. This is cool. Like, I was like, all right, I'm into it. I can get into it, can't I? The answer would be no for me. So, okay, let's tell you what it's about and then I'll tell you why. So the setup of this I thought was interesting. It starts with this big hubbub is happening. This veteran hockey player had been volunteering at an event, and there was this woman there who was volunteering, and he had ended up accidentally hitting her. I can't remember how it happened, but it was totally accidental. Either he was bumped or scared, and he hit her and knocked her out. So she's in the hospital. This woman's in the hospital. And his, like, agent and the coach and, like, the PR person are like, what the fuck did you do, man? Like, you're gonna cause so much problems. And he's like, it was an accident. Well, it turns out this heroine already has, like, memory issues. I don't fully understand what her condition was or if it's real or not. I don't know. But she already has some memory issues because she already has, like, some plans in place for if she forgets certain things. So I was like, I mean, she doesn't have, it's not like she doesn't have, like, Alzheimer's or that. She literally has, like, memory issues that's diagnosed. I don't know what this was. Okay, I don't know. So what that means, though, is that, so she actually is a professional nanny. And, like, the hero didn't know this. He actually needs a nanny. You see where this is going? Okay, so he goes to the hospital. He brings his little girl with, and he's going to go, like, say sorry and apologize to her. And when she wakes up, like, the little girl is, like, right in her face. And so this woman who, again, has memory issues already, this bump to the head, like, made her forget the recent history. So she doesn't know how she got in this place. She just assumes she had, like, a blackout and is having a memory blip. So she sees this man, she sees this little girl, and she's like, oh, I must be the nanny for this dad. So she's just like, oh, I'm so sorry, mister. Like, I have this memory issue. So in the hospital even, she's already kind of, like, giving him an out, and he just is, like, goes along with it because he doesn't know what to do. This big, sexy hockey player is just like, oh, I don't know how to tell her the truth. And so he just goes along with it. And then, when she gets discharged, she goes to his house to stay and is going to be, like, convalescing there and then become the nanny. So all of this happens in the beginning. She just is like, oh, I must be the nanny. And he's just like, well, I needed a nanny anyway, and this will be a good way. I'll make sure she's okay. I won't get in trouble. And he just goes along with it. And so now she's, like, in his house. He just has her living there with him and his daughter without knowing anything about her besides, like, oh, I guess she's been a nanny before, and also feeling guilty because he knocked her out. So yeah, it was just weird. So there's all of that. there's all of that. And I was just like, okay, this is unique. All right, cool. But what really was bugging me was the slang we were putting in it, okay? I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it. I'm okay with hockey slang. I've read lots of hockey books. But there were these quirks added in there that I didn't understand. So, okay, have you ever heard someone say like, let's do it, broski? Like calling someone like bro and adding ski at the end, which is apparently a like northern trait or something, though having lived in Minnesota and North Dakota my entire life, I've rarely seen it done. Like it's been done, but like not much. Maybe there's a region that I'm missing that does this. Well, what was happening in just the first 60 pages of this book is we were adding ski on the end of everything. And not just the hero, and not just in his head, but like other characters, like his mom does it. And like other people on the team are like, who's this Brodsky you got staying with you, you know? And it was just so annoying. It's so hard to convey this, okay? Because I'm not a person to do that. But here's the thing. Because this was an arc, because I have a lot of fucking arcs that I've done this month, as you'll see when you see my monthly wrap up, I knew I wasn't going to like this book. I knew it. I wasn't fine. If this was happening in the first 60 pages, I also didn't really like how this amnesia trope was setting up. And I wasn't liking how easily pushed over this hero was and just going with the flow. Like, I don't like a man who does that easily. So I just bowed out. So I didn't rate this one. I just bowed out of this and DNF'd it and told the PR company, I'm sorry, I won't be reviewing this one. So I'm not going to degrade it any more than that. I didn't read any further than 6 pages, so maybe you'll like that. I did like this has some diversity in it as well. You can look up the author, you can see. So this might be something that people want to give a chance to, but I could not push myself through that. And the author wouldn't have wanted me to, because now I don't have to rate the book and I just tell you what my issues are. And it might still be the book for one of you, because I know how hungry people are for hockey romance. Okay. Next up, I read War of Ruin and Reckoning, which is book 9 in the Fae Guardian series, and is the book that comes right before A Castle of Never and Nightmares, okay, right? Remember a couple weeks back, my review of that book about how I felt like I was missing stuff, and if I'd read this, I would have been prepared? Well, Jenn was right on the money, because exactly those scenes that I was like, I bet these happened in number 9. Every single one of them was in this. There was a big war in this one. We were fighting against Mav and against the Nero. This one actually has Nero's twin from the human world, and her name is Nova. And there's a whole thing with her, but Darn Leaf is her mate. He's one of the elves. This is the 3rd book in the season of the elf. And she, in the beginning of this, is in kind of a tough place. And Leaf is getting sent to do a mission. And Clark is trying to get him to find his mate. She's like, I won't help you. And also the Prime, she said, like, I won't help you complete your mission until you find your mate, because it's very important that all of the Guardians, like, have their mates to help balance them out. And also their mates help connect them to the well, help them connect to their magic so they're able to use it. So yeah, there's just a whole bunch that was happening here. We also do see the final maneuverings of the 6 and how they have gotten Willow into the position that they wanted her and how they were playing that game and everything, which is what's happening in that series. So I do stick by what I said, that if you are reading the Fae Guardian series, you should read the whole thing before you read that. But if you haven't read the Fae Guardian and you'd like to read why choose with these crazy beings in her, you could just start with that. Like, you would be okay if you just read that. I was confused because I didn't read all of this, and so there was conflicting information, whereas after having read this, it makes that book make even more sense. And I mean, I like it even more now. I really do. I enjoyed that book a lot. So Anyway, there's not too much else to like say about this one. I know that's super vague, but this is book 9 in a series and you cannot start here. So, you know, if you're one of the people who's loving the series, you should keep going. There's some great revelations in this one. And we also do set up, we will be getting the season of the Crow. I mentioned that in another thing. We will be getting the season of the Crow because when you read about the series, there's 4 sects of the Fae Guardians. There's the vampire, the wolf, the elf, and the crow. That there's 3 guardians from each all on this council. So there's 12. And then there was the 6 Slua who are all like a part of this, okay? And we have done the wolf, the vampire, and now the elf. But then she had started this like spin-off, right, about Willow. And I was like, are we not going to get the crow? Well, the season of the Crow is coming. And you see the beginnings of it in this one as well. So yeah. Including one of the crow's mates seemingly dying, which, you know, I think we'll probably fix that in a later one. But yeah, if you're loving the series, really like this, the audiobook is out now. That's why I'd waited so long to read this one. And if I had read it earlier, like, I would have been prepared for Willow's book, but I like the narration. It's great. The narrators for this one, I could probably tell you that because I read it down. The narrators for this one were Jack Callahan and Ramona Master. And I greatly liked it. So I gave this one 4 stars and it's a 2.5 on the spice scale. All right, next up, I read a quick little fanfic because I wanted to read another one this month. I haven't got to read as many as I want to, and I'm very sad about it, okay? I'm very sad about it. Especially because some people are having a resurgence of their fanfics again, and it just makes me want to read it. But this one was called Wild Woods, and it is by Buddy B13. I'll have a link to it down below. And this one is a shorter one. It was only about like 225 pages. It was like 50,000 words about. It wasn't too long. And this one was a MFM. Yes, I thought it was MMF because that's the tag that was used, but it was an MFM. But it was still good. This is Victor Crumb, Charlie Weasley, and Hermione. And it's an Omegaverse story. So yes, Hermione has 2 alphas, and they do get along. So that's why this MFM worked for me, is that both of them are alphas. Crumb is actually at Hogwarts for the Triwizard Tournament. In this one, I don't think is Harry pulled into this one? I can't remember how this one works, but it's not quite like in the book, of course. And then when Charlie comes, so Crumb recognizes her and makes himself known to her early on, and then he can tell, he's like, you are going to have a second alpha, so we're going to keep, he's like, we're going to keep our eye out for the second alpha, and he's going to be here to help me take care of you. So he is already prepared for there to be a second alpha coming in, which I thought was interesting. Haven't read one like this before. And then when Charlie Weasley comes with he brings the dragons for the Triwizard Tournament, he meets Hermione for the first time, and he's like, oh my god, she's my mate too. So that's basically what their story is. And in this one, actually, I won't tell you how, but Dumbledore is actually a villain in this one. And I won't tell you how, but it was kind of fascinating. I liked it a lot. So, yeah, I gave this one 4 stars, I think. Let me check, sorry. Yeah, I gave this one 4 stars, and it was a 4 on the spice scale. We got some breeding kink, some big dick, some fluid kink, all the spicy little stuff was there. So, definitely like that. All right, then I read Project Duke by Mariah Stone. I had an ALC of this book. So this book is already out, but I am working with this new audiobook review company called Must Love Audio. So this was my first book that I did with them. And I liked it until a certain point. So the narrators for this one, which is why I signed up for this one immediately, was Justine Eyre and Shane East, which are 2 narrators I love, and this was a dual narrated historical. And so in this one we have our heroine Calliope, and she is trying to find her brother who has been pressed into the Navy. He's been forced into war and he's been gone. He was the Duke, so her family thinks he's gone and she doesn't believe it. She believes he's still alive and she wants to find him. And this is actually the 3rd book in a series too, and one of the other books is about her brother's, like, the brother who, like, took over, who's been the Duke. So, very interested in this series. I just did not care for this heroine. She was too blue stocking for me. I know, some people love that, but I didn't like the amount of it in this one. Okay, so anyway, she's trying to find her brother. Then we have the Duke, Nathaniel, who he is a Duke, but his father has set it up that he cannot access any of the fortune unless he gets married by 30 and produces an heir. Well, he's 29. He's wasted the last, like, 6 or 7 years believing he could get out of this. And now he only has a year left to produce an heir, or he will lose everything. And now that, well, he doesn't have anything as it is. But the thing is, it isn't just him. He has 3 younger sisters as well. And he has, like, not even tried to get married yet because he thought he would get out of this. But he also, because he doesn't have any money, he has worked for the military, kind of. He's a Navy guy, but he's also, like, you know, I don't think he's actually fought, though. But anyway, the point being, he's a connection into that world. And that's the world that Calliope wants in on, because she wants to find out which ship her brother's on and how to get him. Okay? Enough of this. So what happens, they end up in a marriage of convenience. She's like, I'll marry you. I will try to have your heir if you help me find my brother. They agree to do this. They also are very attracted to each other. The problem is they butt heads about how much she's allowed to be involved in finding her brother. He has a lot of possessive issues, not just being an alpha, but his mother was killed in front of him in a very vicious way, and he's very protective of his sisters and now his wife. And so she wants to be involved in finding where her brother is, putting herself in all these dangerous situations, and he's just, like, literally can't handle it. So it is just a power struggle the whole time through this book. And at different times I was on each other's sides. Like, there's some stuff he does that he steps over the line trying to protect her, all right? Specifically, there's a one thing he does that. But all the other things, in my opinion, are her being reckless. She puts his sisters in danger, she puts herself and eventually their unborn child in danger, and I completely understood why he was pissed at her. So, but it just went back and forth, and it was annoying. So, loved the narration. In fact, if I hadn't been listening to this, I would have DNF'd it, because Calliope was just not my type of heroine at all. However, the narration was wonderful. And I gave it a 3.5 star because it's an arc, rounded up to 4, 2.5 on the spice scale. We'll move along because I still have a few books to talk about. So that was okay. I wish it hadn't been my first book I'd read with them because I was a bit annoyed. Then I read an arc of Flurry by Allison Rimes. This was my first Allison Rimes, and this is coming I don't know which day. It comes in April. And this is a MMF hockey romance, and this one also struggles in a place. Man, I have a lot to say about this one too. All right, we'll try to do how we can. One of the guys is her like, it's his best friend's sister. That's how it is. Yeah, she has an older sister, and the sister's friends with the guy who's on the hockey team. Their dad is a coach, and then this hero, Xander, he is bisexual, but he's kind of kept in the closet. Not so much because he's forced to, but he also doesn't want to deal with answering questions, so he's kind of stayed in it, you know, so, but it is kind of his choice to do it. But he has a long-term, like, guy friend / more than, whose name is Damien, and Damien is bisexual, but he also has some, like, sexual hang-ups. He doesn't really like to be touched, but he likes to watch. So there are times where, like, him and Xander are very close, and sometimes Damien will watch him with women, and that, like, makes him feel involved. So then we have Willa, who she's always thought that Xander was just gay. She didn't know that he was bisexual. So she's had a crush on him for a while, but she's like, it's never going to happen. He's gay. Well, that's not true. And he is interested in her. And she actually is taking a class with Damien, and that's how they meet. And Damien becomes really interested in her. And anyway, they end up going to try a menage together. So there are scenes where they are, like, all together, but there is one scene of DVP that happens. So 2 P's and a V, right? But the thing that was missing from this story, this is my whole point. I loved this for the most part, okay? I loved 80% of this book, so I am going to recommend it. But where I think it fell off and why I was disappointed, because I was loving this. It's the MMF of my, like, kind of stuff that I love, where they all care about each other. They have, like, different dates for each of them, going on dates and staying close. And when Xander is traveling, Damien's there for her, and then Damien's working through his, like, trauma to be with them. And where this fell off for me is that, without, like, fully spoiling anything, because I will recommend this, and I think that some of you who don't take Minaj as seriously as me, and I don't mean that as a degrading thing. I just mean like if you like Minaj and you're okay with whatever type of sexual situations they're in, you'll like this. But what was missing for me is that Damien and Xander have been like together, but not seriously, but like there for each other for a very long time. But one of the issues has been Damien can't build trust if he's not in a committed long-term relationship. And Xander never wanted him to ask that because he's traveling all the time. So they know they're very special to each other. They have like been together, but they've never fucked each other. Okay. And again, I know this won't be important for everyone. It won't be. But for me, the way the author laid this out, this isn't just me like, I don't just need to see the two guys fuck, okay? I don't have to see that, right? I just talked about a Charlie and Crumb where like they are almost like, you know, brothers in arms taking care of their Omega. Like, I'm okay with that. The problem is Xander and Damien do love each other, and they do sexually love each other. And through this story, we watch Willa help bridge the gap between them, help Damien get more comfortable with touch, help him, you know, be able to be more involved in it and feel connected with these two people he loves, okay? But we have this scene with them where they have kind of a date night together. They have a weekend away where they're seeing, you know, how much closer they are because they've brought Willa in, right? How she's helped them bridge that gap. And it's beautiful, okay? But then they're going to bed together and Damien said, "Are you going to fuck me finally?" And it's Damien asking for it to happen. And then Xander says, "No, we can't do it without Willa here." And two things. One, I was okay with that answer of like, they don't mean they'll never fuck without her. They mean this first time Willa should be here. And I was like, you know, that makes sense because she's the one who helped with it, right? And the first time any of them did fuck, it was all together, right? It's beautiful. But the problem is that we've shown that the ultimate trust for Damon will be to let Xander fuck him because he never has before. They actually are both tops. And also with Damien's like trust issues and his touch issues, like it was just never going to happen. So it was always like voyeurism or whatever. So why I think this story missed a huge part is that I wouldn't feel so left out of that if the author didn't make it what will show that Damien trusts him the most. Do you see what I mean? Do you see what I mean? Of like, I wouldn't care. I'm not like I have to see the dick go in. Except for the author made that to show the ultimate trust between all three of them would be letting Xander fuck him. She set that up that way. That's not my expectation. The author built it in. So, okay, so he says that. He's like, "No, the first time that I fuck you, Willa should be here." And I was like, that's beautiful. I love that. Well, guess what? Then the epilogue happened and we skipped ahead. Like, what was it? We skipped ahead 10 years and it was over. So she totally like left us out of that emotional climax of the story. And I just felt gypped, guys. I don't know another way to say that. It's not about the sex I missed out on. I missed out on that moment of this triad, of this menage, having that sexual experience together where they were all connected and the most vulnerable they could be, right? Because even when they did the DVP scene, that was her being the most vulnerable. That wasn't Damien being the most vulnerable. And Xander has the moments where he's most vulnerable when he shares their relationship with everyone. That's his vulnerable moment. Willa's is letting them fuck her. Damien's is letting Xander fuck him and Willa being there. And we don't get it. So again, I'm sorry I spent so much time analyzing that, but I'm only this disappointed because I loved this book, okay? I would have given this 5 stars, maybe even more, if she had given me the emotional climax of these three together one last time, seeing them fully do that, right? And I didn't review this one for you guys because it was the Patreon exclusive. However, I'll say this about the book. The book I reviewed this month was the Escorts Tale for Patreon. This was an MMF. It's kind of why I've been in an MF mood between reading this and reading the Antihero, or reading the Homewrecker. And there's a scene in this one where they all fuck together. And the hero, who is disabled in here, he is paraplegic, he allows the hero to touch him. He's very insecure about his legs and about his dick and about how, because he can't feel his dick when his partner used to like ride him, he would feel dead down there. I know I'm making a very different comparison. However, there's a scene at the end, like one of their final sex scenes, where he lets them touch him and be with him. And for the first time, he doesn't feel dead down there. Not because he can feel it, but because he feels that he's a vital part of their menage and that he's not useless and that he's not just an object that they can fuck. He feels a part of it. And it is an extremely powerful scene for being a sex scene, right? That's what erotic romance can do. It makes the sex scenes mean something. And so for Flurry, fine, you can say that's not what it was. Maybe the author didn't feel comfortable writing that. That could very well be. It could very well be. But the problem is then, she should not have set up the expectation that the way for Damien to show his complete vulnerability would be to have Xander fuck him and then not show it. That's the thing. That's the thing. You've set it up as that will show the full, like that will show we're all together. We're all on the same page and we're going to be a successful menage together. And then we're just supposed to assume that it's happened because they skipped ahead 10 years and they have 2 kids together and it's just great, you know? So anyway, I'm sorry I went on a rant about it, but that was more a discussion too from, you know, my writer friends watching. Like, don't set up something to be your climax and then not do it. You know, pick a different climax then. It could have been something else that was picked that proves Damon's vulnerability. You know, maybe the argument is, well, because he even asked him to fuck him, that was it. And I was like, maybe. But in a book that you've already shown all these kinky scenes, and then you don't have a scene where he finally lets his lover fuck him, and Willa's there, like, cheering them on and being a part of it. Every menage that does that has that. Like, you need to have that. And it wasn't there. So I gotta move on. I'm talking about it too much, and I have another one to rant about too, so we gotta move on. This is a long one today. So anyway, all of that said, if nothing that I said is going to bug you, like if you're going to be okay with it, like Flurry was a fun hockey romance. It was very emotional too. It does have some, I should tell you the trigger warnings. It does have some trigger warnings for an abusive parent and a bit of homophobia. But the way that these 3 all support and love each other was very beautiful. And again, that's why I felt let down. So I wanted this to be a 5 or even a 6-star book, and it ended up at a 4, and that's why I feel a little disappointed because it was so close, you guys. It was so good, but I think you'll like it if you won't be as irritated as me. Okay, finally, okay, we have 2 more books to talk about, but we have a rough one, and I will be kind of delicate because this is for a patron, and I love my patron. So thank you, Anonymous. This patron goes by Anonymous. If you're watching this, thank you for this recommendation, okay? But you'll see in my notes, too, when you get your book next week, that this was an extremely difficult story for me. I should show it to you. So this is Heartbreak Warfare by Heather M. Orgeron and Kate Stewart. Okay, I'd never heard of this one. Became clear to me that a lot of people have. This has over 10,000 ratings on Goodreads, and it has almost a 4.5, which, if you don't know, like, that's difficult to hit. There are a lot of people who love this story. And when I shared that I was reading this, I had multiple people message me and say, like, oh, that book wrecked me. Oh, it's so good. And I had Jessen tell me, like, let me know what you think when you're done. And I was then, like, nervous about it. But I had to read it. It's for a patron, so I'm going to read it no matter what. And I didn't read the blurb. So there's 2 things I want to say. Number 1, it's my own fault. I have veto power over any book recommended, right? No one can force me to read a book I want to read. So I just want to be clear too, like, nobody made me read this. I saw the cover. I was like, okay, he's a soldier. All's fair in love and war. Okay, I'm going to give it a try, right? I try to be very open-minded with the books my patrons pick because they support me. So unless I have like a real strong against something, I don't do it. So I didn't do this. Also, because this book was written in 2018, there weren't really any trigger warnings. There was just like, there's gravity to these topics. So please be careful. This is our love letter to an American soldier. And I was like, I love my American soldiers. I'm in, okay? This has cheating at the heart of it. There's not another way to say that. So there are tons of people who love cheating. I have people all the time asking me to make a cheating recommendation video. And I've said, and I'll say it again, I won't be doing that. I won't be making that because I don't enjoy cheating. There are so few books with cheating that I like. And the ones that do, it's usually because they end up in a menage, right? Like The Homewrecker, which I gave 5 stars to. There's cheating, but they know about it immediately and they all end up together, right? This is a love triangle with cheating. It also has some horrific war scenes. It's also about a current war. And those are things that are triggering to me. So it's my fault that I didn't read the blurb of this. I was just like, oh, this is what my friend, this is what I'm going to read. And I didn't look any reviews because I'm like, well, I'm going to read it. And I didn't care for the story. Now, lots of people love it. Lots of people love it. And because I don't want to fully rant on this, I'm not going to. I sobbed through this book. I think anyone would sob through this book. If you have a heart, you will. But it's the kind of crying where I started sad and I ended up mad because this didn't feel like a romance to me. This was watching a beautiful marriage absolutely crumble. And there are reasons for that. Like there are war reasons. There are trauma reasons. There are, really angsty reasons. But the biggest issue for me is that we got 3 POVs. And when you get 3 POVs in a book that will be a love triangle, I already know I'm not going to have a good time because the husband in this case that gets pushed out of his marriage is a wonderful man, and again, I know what the authors are trying to do. They're saying like all's fair in love and war. There's not a villain. There's just tragedy, right? But I don't want to read that in romance. So see, that's the thing. It's a taste preference. There are people who love the angst. Some of my friends who they hear it's cheating and they want to grab that book so fast because they like being able to experience something that in real life they wouldn't like, right? The same way that I love taboo romance, right? That I love stalking and all that stuff. Like I would never want it to happen to me. But in a book, we can safely experience it. And I think that's how some people feel about cheating books. I once heard Gianna Darling say about her books that have cheating is she's like, I had a friend ask me one time, what would happen if you met your real soulmate and you were married to someone else? Like, what would you do? Would you stick it out or would you get out, right? Well, my answer is I wouldn't cheat on the person. If I found it, I would get out of it, right? But anyway, this case, again, I'm going to move on from this one because at the end of the day, I can't say I'm glad that I read this, but it was an interesting experience because I wouldn't normally read a book like this. It also reaffirms that I don't really like books like this. This was also written really well, so I respect it. It is not my cup of tea. And to Anonymous, I hope that you won't be too upset. My notes are mostly me crying, so just know that. But, thank you for picking a book that got me out of my comfort zone. That's all I can say. I need to be more careful about reading the blurbs of books sometimes though, because if I'd looked up the trigger warnings for this, I wouldn't have done it, and I would have spared myself the heartbreak of this. But if you don't know what it's about, this book came out in 2018, and it is a female soldier, and I can't remember how old she is, but she's a young soldier. She has a husband and a son, and her husband actually was in the military too. That's how they met, so, he's not someone who can't understand her pain. Just want to put that out there. But she's a medic. She's in Iraq? I don't even know where she goes, but she's over there. And there's Briggs. He's kind of this flirty soldier that she's working with. And she's very clear, I have a husband. And he's like, I'm just flirting. We could die any day. Ha, ha, ha. Well, then their Humvee gets attacked. And the 3 of them get captured by the enemy. And they are we'll just say this, they're in captivity for 56 days before they get out. And afterwards, neither of them are the same, of course. And that leads to Briggs and Katie only being able to relate to each other and leaving everyone else kind of on the outside. So you can see how that might lead to a marriage issue. So yeah, but again, we also get the husband Gavin's point of view. And this HEA only has 2 people together. And again, I would caution that it barely felt like an HEA to me. Again, was it very honest about some things? Yes. Does it take on some topics that are difficult? Yes. Did I cry the entire time? Yes. So if any of those things appeal to you, this book will appeal to you, okay? So, all right, let's move on. I said that like 3 times. I gave this 3 stars. And I'm not even going to talk about the spice in it, because this book, I don't want to focus on the spice, but I gave this 3 stars, mostly because I do respect it. I think these authors told a powerful story, and they wanted to write a love letter to an American soldier, and I think in some respects they do, of just like what they put up with and why they do what they do. But the final thing too, and I wrote a note, anonymous, I wrote a note to you in this about just like why this is such a powerful story. So again, please don't feel bad. Don't feel bad about picking it. But one of my friends in 2011 was by a roadside bomb and was in the same hospital that they go to in Germany. And he was there for 20 days and he almost lost his leg, and he still has shrapnel in his shoulder, and he still has to go in for his checkups every month. And he, you know, has been injured since he was 22 because of that, you know. And I've heard a lot of stories that are told in this book, like from his own mouth. And it is true that they have gallows humor, and he's able to laugh about his injuries, wishing that he'd been hurt worse, because you get more money if you're like, each limb is worth like $10,000 basically. So it's like, man, if I'd actually lost my leg, I would have been doing that. Like things like that, that definitely soldiers will tell you, you know? And it's something that as an outsider, you're kind of like horrified. Like, how can you be joking about this? But that's how they get through it. You know, so there are parts of that only another soldier will fully understand. And civvies, as we are, civvies, we can only empathize to a certain degree. But again, I have the utmost devoted respect for every branch of military and every soldier, because they don't pick the wars. They just pick to serve. And that's all I'll say about that. We'll move on to the last one, which is a huge tone change, but we're already at an hour. And yeah, it was tough. We'll just say that. It was a tough book to get through, and I respect everyone who loves it. And it was powerful. So I've ended the week with Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. I really wanted to get to this one this month. I brought up before, I've been a fan of Nevessa Allen for a very long time. Her books used to not do so much. She's written in a lot of different subgenres. She's written erotic historical, she's written a biker book, she's written paranormal, and she does serialized writing, which is now on her Patreon. It used to, I think she still posts to her website too, but she now has a Patreon for it too. And she wrote this stalker masked man romance, and it's a bit of a comedy as well too. I will say, if you liked Butcher and Blackbird, I think there's some fun you could have in this. There is a killing and hiding the body involved in this one at some point too, which was interesting. But our heroine, what's her name, Allie, she's really into masked men, and there's one on TikTok that she watches all of his thirst trap videos. She's super horny for him. She really likes him. And this horny masked man is actually her ex's roommate, who is like a computer nerd, and he has been posting these videos, and he's ready to kind of tease Allie into a relationship. So he starts by one of his videos. Well, she's at work that day, so she's a nurse, which is kind of cool. I liked seeing, I love reading about nurses for sure. While she's at work, a new video gets posted, and when she watches this, she realizes that it was filmed in her bedroom. So she goes home that day, and there's proof, like he's left proof that it was her room he filmed this in. So instead of her being scared though, she's pissed, because she's like, what the fuck is happening? And so she, funny enough, reaches out to her ex and says, hey, isn't your roommate a computer guy? Like, I need some help trying to track this dude. And so Josh, who is the masked man, is like, oh fuck, she's gonna figure it out. So I will say she does figure it out actually very quickly. And so then they are like playing this game with each other, and it gets like pretty hot. This is, like I said, it's one of those that it's more lighthearted once we get going. Again, there is a murder in here. It's not somebody we're sad who dies. They deserve it. again, in the way of like Butcher and Blackbird. Allie is also tangentially connected to the mob, so we get to see like some of that included, but mostly this is just a lot of kink going on in this one, okay? There's praise kink, mask kink, knife play, blindfolds, primal play, there's being fucked by a knife, stalking, and all those things are in here. It was very hot, but it was also more lighthearted than you might think from the cover of this book. So I ended up giving it 4 stars because for all that it was like going at, it got a little bit like too bulky with the murder plotline in there. It just was kind of like, okay, we're spending too much time on this, like just move back to the sexy stuff. I don't know. You decide. I gave this one 4 stars. It's a 4.5 on the spice scale. Very hot, very spicy. You'll have a good time. So anyway, all the books that I talked about are linked down below. If you'd like to purchase any of them, you can check them out. Again, thank you so much to my patrons who make this channel happen and keep my life interesting, right? I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.